18-year-old Choki Naima is not an ordinary monk. Known as the 23rd Shabdrung Rinpoche, he is one of the living Buddhas. The living Buddhas are venerable and mysterious figures in Lamaism who are reincarnated in one lifetime after another. In the Tibetan language, Rinpoche literally means treasure. He studies at the Drepung Monastery, which is viewed as the equivalent of Harvard or Cambridge for young Buddhists in Tibet. Shabdrung traveled to the Taklung Temple this morning. The temple is where he resides, and he is responsible for all of the temple's religious affairs. Monks were conducting their morning rites in the main shrine of the temple. In the middle sits a clay statue of Padma Sambhava, the Indian guru who brought Buddhism to Tibet during the 8th century. At the end of this year, a new Buddhist academy will come into being. The 2.5-year project was initially intended to be a resting place for Shabdrung, but became a school later instead. It cost about $1.25 million to build. The Taklung Temple and the local government each covered one half of the cost, respectively.
I hope to reconstruct the temple because it will provide a place for monks to study all Buddhist scriptures and knowledge about Tibet. Also, they can learn music, poetry, and even English there.
Shabdrung walked with the Khenpo, or abbot of the monastery, down a slope to another shrine. This shrine is still under construction. Today, Shabdrung will hold his own rituals there. Shabdrung and other monks entered the shrine in succession. Then, the living Buddha sat cross-legged on his throne in the center to preside over the religious rite. As they chanted Buddhist scriptures, worshippers came forward in single file. They waited quietly, hoping that the living Buddha would touch the tops of their heads. This kind of gesture is believed to be a blessing from the living Buddha that can help them.
People are ignorant of how to break away from the sea of misery. They need a pathfinder. Living Buddhas and monks are all alike. They are the pathfinders for all living creatures.
The hardest part of being a living Buddha is that Shabdrung has to study harder than his peers. He began his studies with his Khenpo when he was just 13. Living Buddhas are expected to acquire the Geshe, the equivalent of a doctoral degree in Tibetan Buddhism. It will take him another 5 years to obtain this accolade. He studies 14 hours a day, mainly focusing on Buddhist scriptures. After obtaining his Geshe, he will still have to study Buddhist theory even more deeply. He also plans to live in a cave for 5 years, 5 months, and 5 days, in the tradition of those who came before him. At Taklung, canteen monks are tasked with preparing meals for the rest of the monks. Shabdrung's lunch for today includes stewed yak meat, potato chips, and asparagus. Tibetan Buddhists are not vegetarians, unlike most other Buddhists. In the afternoon, Shabdrung talked to the other monks and tested their knowledge. The other monks were asked to recite scripture in sequence. Herdsmen have come to the temple to pray for blessings and pay homage to him.
In Tibetan Buddhism, we are all equal. There's no distinction, neither high nor low.